Alrighty, what's going on, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Time Out with Doc and Caveman. As always, you are here with Dr. Fantasy and my co-host, the Fantasy Caveman. We are continuing to roll along here with our team previews for the upcoming 2021-22 season. Today we're going to be talking about the Chicago Bulls, but before we dive into that, make sure you guys subscribe on YouTube and wherever you listen to audio podcasts as well. It goes on Google, Spotify, all the major ones. So make sure you check us out there as well and subscribe. We still have tons of teams we're going to be talking about. We're just starting to record some of the teams that made it into the playoffs today. So we got a lot of basketball to talk, and make sure you guys don't miss it. So with that, let's roll along with the Chicago Bulls. Last season, they were 31-41, good for 11th in the Eastern Conference under head coach Billy Donovan. A few random stats from last season. They were 17th in offensive efficiency, 11th in defensive efficiency, which might be slightly surprising. Consider when you look at this roster, it doesn't look like one that was very strong defensively, but Billy Donovan has been known throughout his coaching career to coach teams. We talked about the Thunder a few years ago,
Yep,
and you always bring up that roster, but he's always been known as a great defensive-minded head coach, and he brings great leadership. So most of his teams at least play very tough defensively. They were very poor rebounding the basketball last season, were 24th in the league, and they allowed the 7th worst three-point percentage, so they weren't overly effective on the perimeter either. But they still played and it's interesting when you look at their stats. There wasn't very many good individual individual defenders, but they played very well as a team. So some of their leaders from last season, and then I'll let Caveman talk about a few guys he was impressed with. Zach LaVine, unsurprisingly, led the way in points with 27.4. Nikola Vukovic played only about 25 games with them, but still averaged 21.5 points. Kobe White with 15.1 points as well. Rebounds, you had Vukovic with 11.5. Thad Young, who is no longer with the team, at 6.2. And you're going to notice that theme quite a bit as we talk about this team. This is going to be a very different-looking Bulls team up for the upcoming season. Zach LaVine, 4.9 assists. Kobe White, 4.8. And steals, you had Thad Young with 1.1, Vukovic with 0.9, and then Daniel Gafford was their blocks leader with 1.1. So Caveman, and not that there's many guys left except Zach LaVine, Vukovic and Kobe White are there as well, but who impressed you last season?
I mean, yeah, you talked about when it comes to these guys that impressed me, I don't really like talking about guys that are no longer there because, who cares? They're not with the team anymore. But I am gonna go to Zach LaVine route. I mean, he was pretty like sensational when you think about it last year. You mentioned his 27 points. He actually set career highs in 5 different categories. I mean, I believe it was he set career highs in points, rebounds, assists, free throw percentage. So he really had a career year and ended up actually finishing 5th in the most improved voting as well. So I mean, he really showed that while the Bulls, they got some new pieces. While the Bulls aren't really ready yet to say they're champions, I definitely think Zach LaVine showed that he could lead his team, depending on how the other pieces perform. But I think he can be the best player on a quality playoff team. They got a bunch of pieces there now with them. So I like that. And it's scary because I think LaVine can even this season can build on the season he just had because he is now the centerpiece of this team. He is their best player. So I really, there is rumblings. He did sign with a new agency. I believe he signed with Clutch Sports. So there was some rumblings, that could signal something about him possibly leaving Chicago, but obviously I don't see that being the case really. But I'm excited to see what he does going forward because he really had a career year last year, and I really think he's a guy that he's not a superstar yet. I don't think, but I think next year he's easily ready to take that leap into being a superstar.
Yeah, I would be surprised if he left the Bulls because they're showing a commitment to winning. And at this point, he's in a good situation to where he'll be a all-star level player on a potential, I don't want to say a championship caliber team, but they're starting to construct themselves in a way that they can at least compete for a championship. Would I be surprised in the next few years if the Bulls found themselves in the NBA finals? I definitely would not be. So they're at least setting themselves up to be competitive. Yeah, and Levine, like you said, he was a great playmaker last year. Still not overly strong defensively, which was probably one of the reasons they weren't great defending the perimeter last season. But let's talk a little bit about two other guys. Kobe White, a lot of people were disappointed with last season. And I think this is another classic example, similar to Tyler Hero. And I've said this to you and Rydog before, but I think people forget how young these guys are sometimes. So their development doesn't happen overnight. And I think people saw what Kobe White did at the end of 2019, 2020, and they expected him to average 25 points last season, which is just kind of unrealistic at 21 years of age. So I was still encouraged overall by his development. He was more efficient. He shot 90% from the free throw line. He could still get there more. He doesn't have a high volume, but shot better from the 3-point line slightly. His field goal percentage was up over 2%. He averaged more points. So I thought he was overall more effective. And
Yeah,
he's still only 21 years old.
yeah. I don't get why people, because you look at his percentages, more points, more assists, more rebounds, a higher free throw percentage, higher field goal percentage. Like, I'm not understanding the hate towards, like, he improved percentage wise across the board from his rookie season. Almost everything is better. I mean, it looks like he did commit more turnovers. But I think that was a case of having a little bit more volume. I don't think that's going to be an issue this year. I don't think he's going to have the ball in his hands a ton this year. Because and that's unfortunate with the guys they brought in. Kobe White's kind of buried on the depth chart now. I think it's going to be very hard for Kobe White to find some consistent playing time and rhythm. But I liked him too. I mean, he improved on a lot of stuff. So I mean, I don't really understand the hate, but I mean, he's another guy where I'm hoping he gets a chance to improve even more, but I'm not entirely optimistic because you look at the guys they brought in, which we'll talk about. I just don't see how much opportunity he's gonna have this year.
The reality is, if Kobe White has a future with the Chicago Bulls, it's going to be more of a Jordan Clarkson role where he's that scoring punch off of the bench. And there's nothing wrong with that. If he had a nice Jordan Clarkson kind of career, that's kind of what I foresee Kobe White having, is just being that scoring punch off the bench. That's what he's going to be asked to do this season, and we'll talk about their transaction soon. But the other guy that I want to bring up, because you and I hated it, a lot of people all around the basketball community hate it, but when Patrick Williams was taken 4th overall last season, everybody was like, what are you doing, Chicago? But he played really well last season, and I think he deserves a lot of credit. He proved to be that tough defender that we thought he was going to be from day one. He played a lot of tough minutes for them defensively, but he shot over 39% from three-point land, was very effective, 48% from the field as a whole, brought in almost 5 rebounds. He was really good his rookie season. He was even more than just a quality defender. He actually provided some pretty quality minutes offensively as well. So I think he does, once again, another guy. He's only 20 years old, and what he did in his rookie season was very encouraging, and I was honestly really surprised that he was as good as he was in year one.
Yeah, and when you talk about this team, you mentioned how they struggled a bit defensively. He's their best defender right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I don't think he's really with the other pieces similar to Kobe White. He's not going to be asked to do a lot offensively.
Yep.
His role this season is really gonna be that defensive anchor in that starting lineup, which
Mm-hmm.
I think he's very capable of handling it. As he showed, he was a very solid defender in his rookie season. So I think he can even improve on that.
Yep, I definitely agree with that. So let's look at what they've done this offseason. We've alluded to it a few times. This has been a very busy offseason for the Bulls. So let's just dive right into it. They only had 2 draft picks. Io DeSunum and Marko Samanovic were their 2 draft picks. Neither what both of them actually have the potential to play a few minutes. More Samanovic, and we'll talk about that when we get to the depth chart. But through free agency slash the trade market, they've added Lonzo Ball, Alex Caruso, DeMar DeRozan, Tony Bradley, Derek Jones. Maybe you've heard of a few of those guys. And then they lost quite a few pieces as well. I mean, I mentioned it when we first started. This Bulls team is going to look much, much different than it did
Yep.
last season. And because they did lose some quality role players as well. El Farouk Aminu, Lauri Markkanen, Thad Young, Daniel Tice, Garrett Temple, Thomas Sadorinsky. A lot of quality depth veteran pieces there that they lost. So we'll see if that has an impact on how they perform this season. But very busy off season. But as a whole, do you like it? Do you like the direction they're going in?
Man, you can talk about whether these everybody fits ideally or not, but you cannot say the Bulls did not go out and try to have a
Mm-hmm.
productive offseason. I mean, you can question, and we'll see how they all fit together. And I'm encouraged by it. But you got Brendan DeRozan. The Chicago went out and spent money to bring these guys on board via trade and free agency and whatnot. I mean, you talk about DeMar DeRozan got 3 years, $85 million. Lonzo Ball got 4 years, $80 million. You got 160 mil committed between DeRozan and Lonzo Ball, and I'm pretty sure LaVine. I'm not sure if LaVine was extended yet or not. I'm not sure what his contract situation's like, but between those three, and even a guy like Caruso, 4 years. So they really spent some quality money to bring these guys in. I mean, looking at this team, I personally we'll talk about it when we preview next. I like the pieces they brought in. You mentioned their draft as well. I think the Sumu is a guy you saw. He's a guy that I thought was gonna get taken in the first round. Like back when we did our mock, I had him going in the late first round. I think he's a guy you kind of look at when you're looking at this bench. They don't. You look at it, kind of looking for. They don't have a ton of legit scoring punch off the bench outside of Kobe White. So I think this if Desumo can come out and prove that he can score at this level, which is his game, I actually think he could have and he can find himself to be playing some decent minutes even with a crowded backcourt if he can prove that he can score, which he very much has a chance to do. So overall, I love that the Bulls were just willing to go out and try to put some pieces together to be competitive. We'll have to see if it works or not, but I personally love the direction.
Yeah, I really like it as well. Zach LaVine, by the way, just to add to his contract situation there, he's going to be an unrestricted free agent after this season, so he's getting paid $19.5 million. So we'll see what the future holds for him there.
That
That's
is
going to be
interesting.
that'll be a fun storyline to follow throughout the season. And I mean, he has to be encouraged by the moves that they've made. So if he's committed to winning, he's in a pretty good situation, in my opinion. So
I mean,
I love it on
yeah, they can pay him whatever they want to pay him to keep him because
for right now, yeah. And they're at an interesting situation where by the time DeRozan's contract is up, if Patrick Williams keeps developing, he'll be in a position where they're going to need to extend him. So they'll be able to kind of rotate through. That's one of the reasons I like this offseason for them, is because I think they did a good job of balancing youth with star power, with depth, and all. I think they really approach it instead of being, let's just get 3 big time all-star players. Lonzo Ball's still only 23. You can build a team around him with his playmaking ability, and they added a lot of ball handlers. DeMar DeRozan averaged 6.9 assists last year. I don't know if a lot of people realize that, but
I mean, how much of that was the fact that literally he was the only legit playmaker on San Antonio last season?
I don't know if that's true because Derek White and DeJounte Murray both
Well,
had quite a
we'll
few
talk about
assists as
that.
well. That's in actually the next episode. That's a sneak
We'll
preview. So subscribe and watch the next episode. But yeah, I mean, they have lots of ball handlers now. I think they're going to be a little better defensively. I think they have a good mix of 3-point shooting. We'll talk a little bit about their depth. I think there's a few holes there, but I really like them signing Tony Bradley. I think that's one of the most underrated moves that they made this offseason. Everybody wants to talk about Lonzo and DeRozan, but to me, even Alex Caruso, I feel like a lot of people have been talking about. Don't get me wrong, good acquisition, but Tony Bradley is very young still. He looked really good with the Thunder at the end of last season, and I think he's going to provide a lot of quality minutes off of the bench behind a lot of these star power players that they have now. So I thought Tony Bradley was a nice depth move, and I think that the biggest key here is, and the reason I have faith in it is Billy Donovan, but I still think defensively is going to be the key because when you look at it, Lonzo is a much improved perimeter defender. He's been very good. He was very above league average the last few seasons, actually. Actually, when you look at last year, he wasn't great, but it was more. Sometimes defensive rating is misleading because the team that you're on can also influence that. And the Pelicans as a whole were terrible defensively last year, so that influences numbers. But throughout his career, he's been a very good perimeter defender. Caruso's going to help in that department. But DeRozan's been subpar. Zach LaVine's been subpar. But they have Patrick Williams still. So I think there's just a good mix. They have ball handlers. They have some shooting. They have some star power. They have youth with Kobe White and Lonzo and Patrick Williams. They have a veteran presence.
Shooters. Because Vukovic.
Yeah, I mean, Vukovic
they
stretches.
Got 5 shooters. Their starting lineup has Patrick Williams can knock them down as well. So they got 5 shooters on the court.
So when you have this roster, who they should be very good offensively, if they are 10th or 11th again in the league defensively, this is going to be a top few seed in the conference. I mean, that's just the reality. So, I mean, let's go through. We've kind of mentioned the depth chart. I will go over the depth chart now. But at the backcourt, Lonzo and LaVine. Behind them, they have Kobe White, who's going to be the scoring punch off of the bench. Alex Caruso. Troy Brown's listed behind LaVine and DeRozan at the 3. So DeRozan at the 3 with Troy Brown / Derek Jones. Desanmu is going to be playing the 2 and 3 off the bench as well. We'll see how much he plays. I think it'll take a few injuries for him to get consistent minutes.
I think, like you said, his scoring punch off the bench is going to give him a chance to at least play a few minutes.
Yeah, a few minutes at least, but probably not a huge role because realistically, they're going to be a little top heavy. You're going to see those top 5 guys, Caruso, White, and then Derek Jones and Tony Bradley mix in, and probably there's not going to be many minutes left over for anyone else. But at the 4, Patrick Williams is starting with rookie Samanovic actually listed as the starter behind or the backup behind him right now. And then you have Vukovic at the 5 with Tony Bradley behind him. So do you see any holes right now in this depth chart?
Certainly not in the backcourt.
Yeah, no.
I don't think the backcourt has any holes. And same with the wing, because a lot of those guys can also, their backcourt, a lot of those guys can also play the wing as well. I mean, and I'm sure you agree, the front court depth is a little questionable right now. Behind Patrick Williams and Vukovic, you really got Smanovic and Tony Bradley, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
That's it for that front court depth. That's a little concerning. With Patrick Williams and Vukovic, though, there's gonna be guys that are gonna play heavy minutes anyways. You're gonna see this whole starting 5 like this, and I'm sure Billy Donovan is gonna do what he can, but you're gonna see. I wouldn't be surprised if all of these guys average close to 35 minutes a game each. This starting 5 is going to play a lot together. This is gonna be. They're really gonna rely on this starting unit. But But yeah, the depth is if Vukovic or Patrick Williams goes down, I mean, Derek Jones can play a little bit of 4-2 if need be. But aside from aside from the questionable depth in the front court, other than that, I really like this team overall and their depth. It's just the front court. That's the only really thing that's that concerning.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I won't beat a dead horse. I mean, that's a reality. The backcourt's set, but there's a lot of questions. Like I said, that's why I really liked the Tony Bradley signing, because it was a necessity. Because before they had him, I mean, who did they have behind these Patrick Williams and Vukovic? Even less than they have now. So I think Bradley's going to play a lot of valuable minutes. And realistically, if Vukovic misses any time, Tony Bradley's going to have to slide in and play a really big role, so I think that'll be interesting to watch as well. But let's look forward to this next upcoming season and where we think they're going to finish. I've alluded to the amount of success I think this team could have over the next few years, but where do you see them finishing for this upcoming season?
Man, I mean, I love the moves they made. I would be shocked if they're not a playoff team. I would be. I mean, it's gonna take a little bit of time to gel, but there is so much talent on this team. I'd be shocked if they don't finish in the top 10. I mean, they almost finished in the top 10 this season, and they got better. Obvious, I think. With the additions of Lonzo and DeRozan and Caruso and all that. I mean, I think they finished in the top 8. If we're being honest, I think they're going to be somewhere from 6 to 8 if we're being honest here. I think the moves they made, it's going to be, maybe it'll be a little bit of a slow start out of the gate, but I really think these pieces work well together. It's just going to take a little bit of time to gel. I mean, Zach LaVine's is going to be able to play a little bit more off the ball this year, which is going to, because he was asked to do a ton, not only scoring, but ball handling as well last year for Chicago. So now you got Lonzo Ball, who's one of the premier point guards in terms of setting up his teammates and dishing it out. So LaVine's going to be able to play off the ball this year. DeRozan's going to be able to do. DeRozan can handle some playmaking ability too. So LaVine's really not going to have to do much of that this year. I really think that big three that they have, that's going to work. Vukovic, Vukovic isn't strong defensively. He still is a big, tall guy that can get rebounds and can shoot threes. So I like this. I'm gonna say somewhere between 6 and 8 for the Bulls.
Between 6 and 8. All right. Well, I'm gonna go higher than that. I'm gonna go 4 or 5. I had them heading into next season. I believe that they can be the 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. Well, I think that when you look at the 76ers, Nets, and Bucks, most people have as the top 3 in the Eastern Conference. I think that 4 is up for grabs. I could argue it's the Miami Heat right now after their acquisitions this offseason, but I really believe in the construction of this team, and I believe in Billy Donovan, and I think that head coaching
Yeah, and Billy Donovan can lead that Thunder team.
He's a god dang magician, I tell you. So
he can easily lead the ball. I can definitely see them being 4th. If he can lead that Thunder team to that 5th seed.
Yeah, no, that's why I'm not exaggerating. I think this team could be the 4 seed. I think this is the kind of matchup that whoever ends up as the 1 seed, whether it's the Nets, Bucks, or 76ers, I think they'd be a little nervous to play the Bulls in the second round.
Especially come playoff time when they've finally been able to gel.
Yep.
People are going to be down on them because I do think out the gate it's going to take a little bit because they have so many new pieces. Mm-hmm. They're going to Lonzo, DeRozan, LaVine are going to have to learn how to play together. But once this team finds it and they click, they're going to take off.
Yep. Yeah, that's why they'll be a top 10 defensive team, and you can say, "Oh, hold your horses," but they were almost a top 10 defensive team last year, so they're going to be a borderline top 10 defensive team, a top 10 offensive team with this talent. They have shooters, ball handlers, a great head coach. They're in a prime position to be a top 4 seed, in my opinion. Worst case scenario, fifth for me personally, but I
Really?
think that this combination of talent, shooting, coaching, add a little defense into there, and I think this is a team that's going to make a lot of noise. I actually really like the construction of them, and they would be similar to when I was all in on the Suns last season with their new construction. I'm
Huh?
with Chris Paul coming in. I'm kind of all in, and I
You're
think
all
that
in,
this is
so
going to work.
now your expectation, now the Bulls have to make the finals. Because
I mean,
you're,
I said that I didn't think the Suns were going to make. I liked the Hawks too. I didn't think they were going to make it that far, but I would not be surprised if the Chicago Bulls were in the Eastern Conference Finals. I would not be surprised. Would I predict that? But I'm going to sit here and say I would not be surprised.
yeah, makes sense. And the more I hear you talk, and we haven't, we're obviously a bit away from doing official standings predictions, but I say 6 to 8 right now. But I would not be shocked if I had them in the top 4 or 5 either. It's just the
Oh
more
my
I
God! Now you're
think
going to
about
copy me, Caveman. Don't do
the
that.
more I think about it, the more I like it. So we'll
Maybe
have to
I'm just that convincing. Maybe I've just convinced you.
maybe.
But yeah, so busy off season for the Bulls. It'll be a fun season moving forward for them. Once again, this is a team that didn't even get to play in the play-in games for the playoffs last season. So, and we're talking about a team that could potentially move up into the top 5. So that just tells you how competitive the Eastern Conference is going to be this season. So it'll be fun to continually talk about the Eastern Conference here. But we appreciate everybody who has listened. We've gotten lots of views recently. Make sure you subscribe, though. We've gotten lots of views. We do appreciate the subscription as well. So subscribe on YouTube wherever you listen to podcasts. And we will see you for the next episode, which is going to be my San Antonio Spurs.
Mhm.